Hey, what's up, friend? Are you a mama who wants to stop just getting by? Maybe you're motivated to grow yourself in your motherhood, your marriage, and you want it to bear fruit. Or maybe you want to stop letting the mom guilt, the shame, the limiting beliefs, and lies. Amen. That's me right there, sister. And start stepping into the woman and the truth that God has created you to be. While we're juggling all the things, right? Nursing a baby, battling laundry, trying to keep it together, and a spicy marriage. But where the heck do we start? Hey friend, you are in the right place. I am here to hold your hand through this journey because I believe when you're ready to take control of your life, beat the limiting excuses, and step into the woman God created you to be, you can not only survive, but you can thrive. But you're gonna have to show up for yourself. It's time for me to tough love your way through taking self-care seriously, investing and growing in your marriage, and owning your motherhood, and getting rid of those excuses because the glory is in the journey. It's in the mess. In this podcast, you'll find navigating mom guilt, mindset, and marriage strategies and everything in between, with no fluff and lots of fun. Let's go. Hey girl, are you ready to find connection with your spouse again? Show up for your marriage 100% and quit saying, that's just how it is. Join me in the So She Grows Marriage Method program. It's a 6-week self-study program where we deep dive into common myths, God-centered truth, prioritizing our marriage, and focusing on connecting emotionally and physically with our spouse. Bounce chicka bout wow. I'm kidding. That's only a tip of the iceberg, but in a doable way among kids and chaos. I want you to experience the fruitfulness and favor God has in store for your marriage, y'all. If you're ready to do the work and show up to deepen your marriage in a new, fun, exciting way, I am so here for it. Join in the So She Grows Marriage Method today. Link is in the bio. Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to continue the conversation on marriage and intimacy, and this time, I'm including Katie from Marriage Empowered in the conversation. We have been doing group lives together. Usually it's me, Katie, and Ryan. And we do a live together on Facebook or on Instagram. And so this time I actually caught the recording. I'm going to share it. And so that is why she sounds a little bit far away. If you can't tell, I'm going to fix the recording moving forward to make sure we all have equal sound quality. Also, heads up. I have a lisp talking in this video, in this recording, because I'm wearing my Invisalign trays and your girl is like over 30. And so I'm not trying to be 50 and still wearing these dang things, trying to hope for straight teeth. Okay. Like I want them in and out and gone. So I am wearing them every chance that I can get. Unless I am officially sitting down to record an episode, they in my mouth. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But this is a really good episode because I love that you can hear different perspectives about how we approach things. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's marriage is different. Everybody's husband responds to things differently. And so I love that we can share our unique stories, our unique perspectives, the way we handled it, the way they responded, all these things, because hopefully you can relate to like different bits and pieces of each of our story and feel like it's not just you, or feel like you can apply it to your life because you can relate to them or me or whatever. So without further ado, let's get to this episode on intimacy with Katie and I. It is bomb. Let's go. So I've been talking to my group, as you know, about intimacy and making it a priority in your marriage. And so since they've already heard a little bit or mostly about what I have thought about it, which I'll continue to share today as well, but I would love to see and hear your perspective of like what's going first. Like, let's talk about maybe where we are in our marriage or some things that we noticed in our marriages and how we made adjustments in that way as far as intimacy, or like in the season that you're in now or a season that you remember where it just sticks out to you. So I'll let you go first.
There's so much to say.
I know.
On this topic.
Yeah.
I think a big one, and one that I can really relate to, is just and of course there's like every different phases.
Mm-hmm.
For my husband and I, it has almost always been that he has a higher sex drive than me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like when we say intimacy, like that's ultimately like where we go, right?
Right.
Sex. But obviously, it's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So for years of my marriage early on, I really just felt disregarded a lot by my husband's sexual advances. And I mean that because it was like well, you don't do this for me and you don't do that for me.
Yeah.
And all you want from me is that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that a lot from other women. So I feel like that's something that a lot of women can relate to. I mean, for me in particular, I didn't understand that. Like, I felt like there should be so much more other things before we just, jump right in.
Right.
And he did not agree with that. Like now, understanding really like the why behind that, like understanding that was his attempt to connect with me, and we just connect differently. Like obviously, there's a connection with sex for women too,
right?
But it is just so different for us,
right?
Understanding the differences was a huge mind blower for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think we were in the same boat as well, and this is what I just talked about on the Social Girls podcast was figuring out who is who, like who needs intimacy to feel connected and who needs to connect to be intimate. Because sometimes it's flip-flop. Like sometimes, he has those needs more than you have those needs. Like some women just have like an extremely high libido, or they're just sex drive is, more or whatever. And so maybe they find themselves in the position that we see our husbands in a lot of the time. And so I think it starts with having that awkward conversation of who is that person, like who is who, and like what do you need? Because it was the same way. Like we would get to the end of the day, and then at the end of the night, we have like this transition period, or I do, where I have tea and like some sort of treat, whether it's a cookie or a piece of chocolate or whatever. And then that for me is my way of triggering my body, like, hey, you can, for the most part, like somebody always wakes up sometimes or something, but right, like, but for the most part, it's like telling myself and my body, hey, like you're done being a mom for the day. Now it's time for you to be you and go into wife mode or me mode. And so then he would like think, okay, like it's game time, right? And I'm like, no, wait, like, so I had to tell him, I'm like, I need to connect in order to be intimate. So like we didn't talk all day long. So you just can't like hop in the bed and like, think that things are going to go down right now. Like I haven't connected with you at all. We need to sit down together. Like we don't even have to have a conversation, just the act of me and him sitting next to each other, watching a show together. One thing I have noticed is that if we are watching a show, and I don't know if you can relate to this or what you guys do to feel connected, but like when we're together, if we're watching a show together, I can still feel connected to him. But then if we're there and like I have my laptop open, he has his laptop open, and the show's going, then I'm on my phone, like there is something about that to where I don't know what it is about the addition of the things, but then I guess maybe because we aren't talking or we aren't focused on being together. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed when we do that, I don't feel connected, even when we have that time alone, when no kids are there, and all that. So I don't know. How do you guys navigate connecting?
Yeah, well, for me, I make it like, and my husband and I feel the same way. Like, I think it is that extra thing, right? Like, you're sharing the movie or whatever you're watching, but you're each having your individual thing.
Right.
Right? Like, you have that computer open.
That's
he
what
has
it is.
his computer open. And so while there may be one thing in common, there is also something that is not. And that's where your focus is. And that's where your mind is too. Like so much of how we relate and how we connect is our mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a big deal for my husband and I. I shared this in my group was date nights. And even in the date nights we make it a strict policy to have no electronics.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not against like sitting down and watching a movie together, like for crying out loud. That's not what I'm saying. But if you can help it, this has been really helpful for us because we used to like love just like binge watching Netflix and like that was like our thing.
Yeah.
But then also doing too much of that, we realized we're really not connecting. Like we're not catching up with each other's day. We're not talking about what we're looking forward to in life or, all of the fun stuff that you would do if you were out and about at a dinner together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been something that has really helped us because I do like I'm a talker if you can't tell. I wanna talk to connect. And my husband does not.
Okay.
He does not. He's not a big communicator. And that was one thing that we had to, I think, meeting in the middle, like, and maybe you can relate to this too, because I had to do the same thing with him. I had to say, like, I need to, like, feel, like, the connection.
Right.
Like, I need the warm up, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole oven, microwave,
right.
like scenario. You're the microwave on the oven. I need to preheat.
That's a good way to think about it.
I just need to, like, connect with you first and have that conversation. But like, one thing that I struggle with, and I still have to be really intentional about, is making sure that I'm not putting his needs on the back burner just because mine aren't met.
Okay.
Like, your sexual needs are not as important as mine, and therefore are dependent upon my needs being met.
Yeah.
That's so, really like, good. Having that conversation was super important, because now he realizes when I'm just trying to talk to him, I am just trying to connect. Like, he used to see that as a barrier. She's trying to, like, get away from sex. She's trying to, like, get out of it. Yeah. And I'm like, no, this is how I'm trying to get into it.
Yeah.
And once he understood that, it was like, oh. But girl, I'm a mom too. I have an 8-month-old and I have a 7-year-old. And one thing that I have had to do for myself and my husband too is we schedule a date night on the calendar.
Yeah.
And that will include sex. And I have so many people who are like, oh, that's so, like, romantic.
Yeah.
And so not sexy. And it's true. I used to feel the same way about it. But then when I really think about it, it's like anything that is important to us, anything that we are going to commit to, we put on our calendar. And so, like, for us, that was a really big shift, was like, okay, let's just look at it like we prioritize each other so much that we don't want this to just go months or, weeks without doing. Let's at least make this our bare minimum, like once a week, an hour of connection a week. Right? Yeah. Anything outside of that is gravy, but let's at least put that on the calendar.
Yeah. Okay, so you said so many things that I'm, like, trying to remember to go back. Sorry. No, you're good. So, like, at first I want to bring up the fact that, like, okay, so here's what I love about our group, and Ryan's not here to join us, but this is what we were talking about earlier, how we're all in different seasons. We all have different perspectives and stuff, and I love that about us, because here's the deal. You mentioned that, like, when you were talking about intimacy with your spouse and how you need to connect before being intimate, he wasn't on board at first. Where in my situation, I don't have that experience, because once I told him that what I needed, he was, like, on board, game's on, because he knew what he was getting, right? So he was like, I'm all in. Whatever you need, it's going down. And so I want to know, what was that like for you, saying, like, hey, I need this, like, okay. My time limit for social media was like, you're done.
Okay.
But yeah, like, so what was that conversation like, or how did you get him on board to be, to start thinking about the fact that you are like the oven, you need to warm up, you need to preheat to do, more intimate things and to connect in that way. So how did you have that conversation, or how did you guys go about that?
It's funny, that whole, like, oven and microwave thing
we
learned in premarital, like,
really?
Like, in church, like, they taught us that. It was so funny, so it always pops in my head. So it wasn't something that, like, we didn't know about each other. It was just a matter of understanding it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it really came down to actually, like, how I was saying it and how I was communicating it with him. Because for so long, like, our biggest dysfunction was the fact that he is an avoidant personality and I am, like, a vacillator personality, which is, if your audience wants a really fantastic marriage resource, it's How We Love.
Okay.
And it's a quiz you can take and a book you can read, and it is the bomb.
Really?
So How We Love, and that the biggest thing is basically I'm an aggressor. Like, I feel abandoned or unloved, and I will, like, come at him. He will retreat.
That is hilarious. I can see you be like, and he's like,
Yeah. So, and then he retreats, and I feel even more unloved, and then I'm like, why? That's the cycle continues. So, anyways, that's a big part of the test. Helps you identify your cycle and how you're contributing it. And the biggest thing was he always thought, like, if I had something on my head too, like, that was, like, I would feel like I have to resolve that right in that moment for me to feel like I could like
move on,
be intimate with him.
Yeah.
Yep. And he would think I'm like picking a fight.
Right.
And so that was the first part of where I was going wrong in that. But yeah, when I broke it down to him, Ashley, and I specifically like sat down and said, like, hey, like, you understand, like, I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm not trying to avoid sex. I'm actually trying to get my mind right so I can feel up to sex. Right. Like, he was much more motivated. And he still is. He understands what I'm doing now, right? So we're understanding each other. The big thing I think for me is that, like, mentally preparing myself, not looking for him to mentally prepare me, but me mentally preparing myself throughout the day. Like, okay, I'm going to have sex today. Like, I just like literally put it in my mind, and it's like, okay, what do I need to do? Yeah. So I feel sexy and I feel confident and rested, and I want that at the end of the night. Right.
And connected, right? And
connected.
Yeah. I do the same thing, but I don't tell him. So here's one of the things that I've figured out for myself is that I don't like expectations. Like, I don't like to know that we're going on a date night and he's going to expect sex or whatever, right? So, and that may be true, and maybe it's me mind gaming myself, but like, and I'll talk to him, and I've talked to him about that. Like, I don't want any expectations, and so he doesn't say anything about it. And then we've gone date nights where nothing happens at the end, and so then I feel like during the whole date process or whatever, the night out, like, I don't have to worry about what's happening next. I can just be in the moment and enjoy it. And then it turns out that like helps me relax, and then we end up being intimate. So like, if I know, like you said, how in your mind you decide like, hey, I'm going to tonight, I go ahead and start sending those messages. Like, I'll go on Pinterest and I'll look up like ideas for cute messages to send your husband, or flirty messages, because sometimes I can't think of any, And so like,
that's a good idea.
I'll go on there. They have a ton. Oh my gosh. And he like idea. Your husbands don't care if you copy and paste like this message, right? Like, he's just gonna get the end, the receiving end of it. He doesn't care. And so like, I know, like one day I sent him a message that I got from Pinterest, and he was like, okay. And so like, then I am intentionally connecting with him, knowing that like, hey, I want to be intimate tonight. And so I am putting myself in the driver's seat, not waiting for him to connect me, assuming that he knows what he's going to do, or whatever.
Yeah.
Cause I think that's how we get set up for resentment, and like, just not being on the same page, is that idea that like they should know when, and they should be able to read your mind. And I think, and then communicating, I think, is the biggest thing. I think the smartest, and it feels like, looking back, I'm like, why didn't I just say that? Like, why didn't I just tell him that like, I need to have touch points with you throughout the day to feel connected, to give you what you want, because they want what they want, right? So they're going to do what they need to do to get what they want. And then also just having that conversation where he was like, no, like, I don't want, like, because in my mind, I thought, being intimate was like just a need, or like some sort of want, or whatever. And so then he was like, no, like, when we're intimate together, that's how I feel connected to you. That's how I feel our bond and stuff like that. And so understanding that really helped me have a different perspective about it.
He voiced that to you?
Yeah.
That's like really good. most guys like won't come out and explain it and say it like that. So you guys, like, your communication together is like really good and really on point. As far as like that, like, my husband couldn't like come out and verbalize that. Like, he said he needed that. That's how he felt connected to me, but I didn't really get it. Like, it took me reading a book for me to figure that out. Yeah. And that was like, oh, like, okay, it's for women's Only by Shanti Feldhahn, and she's a marriage researcher. I don't know if you read that book before.
No, I haven't. I need all these books you're spelling out. I'm gonna need to go back. No, these are good. I have my pencil.
Mine too. Those are mine too, and I love them because her and her husband do it together. They're marriage researchers from Stanford, and she breaks it down like, basically, women, this is what your men are really saying, and he does the same thing for women, or for men. And that was a big eye-opener for me. It was like, okay, so I am, and this was a big, like, oh, man, I was telling him, like, you need to meet me where I'm at in order to get what you need. Like, until my needs are met, your needs don't get met.
Yeah.
And I can still really be selfish in that way. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm like, I've been momming all day, right?
Yeah.
Like all the things. And the last thing I feel like is being touched.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
And that's like what he so desperately needs. And then I just think about it and I'm like, what if I sat down and I was like looking for connection and communication with my husband because I just needed that from him, and he was like, not until we have sex.
Flipping the tables.
Like, you don't get your communication and connection until I get mine. And that's like how I picture it too, because so on those nights where I'm just really not feeling it, and I'm really not in the mood for it, and I'm like, okay, like, what makes my needs more important than his? Like, am I really that person? You know, and granted, yes, and I always have to say this is like in a healthy, respectful, safe relationship, of course, right? This is what we're referring to,
right?
Because you should never ever feel forced, right, to be in that circumstance, even if it's your husband. So as far as that's concerned, that's how that's my mind game now, Ashley. Like, that really helps me, is be like, okay, it's not that you have to disregard your needs, because I think it's so important, like what you told him and what I had to tell my husband. Like, this is what I need. Like, this is how you warm me up and get me in the mood, right?
Right.
I think it's so important because it is good, but ultimately it's not totally just deciding, like, until you properly meet my needs, yours will be met.
That's really good. So I know a lot of moms can relate to your statement of like, we've been touched all day, we're tired. And usually that's when your intimate times go on, is at the end of the day. So it's like at the bottom of the list already. It's at the end of the day already. How do you transition from mom to you? How do you transition to Katie, to wife, to feeling sexy, feeling like you're in the mood? Like, how do you do that? Do you have any transition things or what?
Okay, I love that you do like a transition, like you have a tea or a treat or, you know, like
it's the same thing every night.
I love it. I love that. I don't actually have like an intentional like cue.
Are you just like game on? Like, you just have to be like, okay, game face. Like, this is.
As soon as my kid is in bed, I am like.
You're like, and I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm waiting for my time. It's so the biggest thing for me is my mornings. It's not my evenings. How I prepare for my evenings is my mornings. And that's, if you want to talk about like an intentional practice for me time. Yeah. That's my morning. And so when I wake up and I fuel myself, and I wake up for me and time with God, and I have my exercise, and I am prepped myself mentally and physically for the day, I am such a better person at night. Yeah. Always. Yeah. On days where that gets messed up, it is much more challenging to be a better person in the evening. I shared with this just the other day, because like I had done football practice with my son. So, I mean, like momming all day, I had client calls, I worked, and then I picked my son up from school, dinner, football, home. Oh, guess what? It's date night. And I'm like, and this is literally like every mom in the audience like has that reaction, right? Like,
yeah.
Like,
I know. I didn't even think that I did that.
But yeah, it's true. That's how I felt, and it was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But I was like, okay, no, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'll. I was yawning. I was ready to go to bed with my son at 8 when I was laying down with him. I was like, I just want to go to sleep. And I was like muscling through this game. And like, I'm just gonna, we'll be, and it's true. Like, it's not always about just waiting till you feel like it. Right. Like, this is where the intentionality comes through. Is like, okay, we have it on the schedule. It'd be so easy to be like, hey, I'm so tired. I just want to go to bed tonight, right? And then who knows when we'll have our next date or next week, right? and I muscled through it, and we ended up having a great time.
Yeah.
And we had a board game, and we did have sex, and it was a great night, and we connected. And if I would have just said, man, I'm just too tired, I'm going to bed, it wouldn't have turned into that.
Yeah. I think that is a really good observation, and something that I'm learning and still working on now is the intentionality. Like, if you're just intentional, it doesn't have to be out of guilt, out of pressure, whatever. It's just like, I'm showing up, and because this is what our marriage needs. Like, I'm investing in our marriage, and it's not always easy, and we don't always want to do it. And a lot of the times I do exactly what I did a minute ago, where you were listing all the things, and I was like, it was date night, and I'm like, we do this every time, almost probably 8 times out of 10. Of course, somebody's calling me. 8 times out of 10, when we have a date night, it's all the things are going on. I have so many things on my to-do list, and then I'm like, or we get into a dispute or argument of something, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go. And he's like, no, like, we need to go. Like, if we are disconnected, if we're arguing, he's like, or if we haven't had a date night in a long time, then we need to go even more so. So he makes me go. He's like, get ready, we're going.
The keeper.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I talk about it all the time on my podcast. I'm like, he should just be like running the show, because I share most of what he says, and that's, it's usually golden pretty much. But so like, he forces me to go, but then I realize, like, halfway through the night, I'm like, man, I really needed this. Like, or I'm really grateful I didn't just back out. Like, I needed to get out, to put on real clothes, to, like, just be me, nobody hanging on me, connecting with my spouse. And so I think that a lot of us get in that place of like, I'm burnt out. How do we do this? But it's that you just show up as best as you can with whatever you have. Like, you're tired, show up tired. Like, they're tired too. I mean, I don't know.
No, I totally think you're right. It comes down to mindset. Like, we have so much of this in our head that, like, dates should look this way.
Yeah.
Should feel this way.
Yeah.
And when they don't, or they're not lining up to be that way, we just want to say, forget it altogether.
Yeah.
But then that's the exact thing that sabotages our relationships too, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. Absolutely. And my husband is definitely so great about kind of dragging me out of myself from time to time, because I mean, more so in the past, I definitely would just say, like, no, screw it, like, we're not going to go.
Right.
And those never turn out well. When for me as a mom, I'm working on something new that I want to talk about too, is that, like, motherhood is the society's acceptable form of workaholism.
Yeah.
Because it's such an excuse for women. Like, and look, it's a valid one, right, to a degree, because you are tired, and it is the hardest freaking job ever. Right? But if we're really honest with ourselves, if we pour every single iota of our passion and dreams into raising our children, they grow up, they move out, and move on.
Yeah.
And guess what is left? That's not the way God intended us to live our lives. We have individual purposes in our own right, in our own life. And that is, yes, part of serving your husband and your children, right? And being there for your kids and your family. But so many women just totally lose their identity in becoming a mom and being a mom, and then they feel fine and honestly self-righteous about neglecting their husband in the process, or neglecting their marriage in the process. And I think that's a huge intimacy killer right there, because you just feel so like, well, because I'm tired and I have the right to just not.
Right. I totally agree. That is probably a whole nother conversation that I would love to have with you. I'm like already thinking that is our next topic, but because that is so true. And I mean, it is hard to get wrapped up in it and to get blinded by the idea of I'm doing this for my kids, because it's such a good thing, right? Like, it's a good thing masked in
I don't even know what it's masked in, but when you get so into it, you're just like, okay, but this is all for good. So like, why is it a big deal that I'm not prioritizing my husband right now? Or, you know, but, I would say like and I'll share this, but like if we, I can't even remember how many years it was ago, like 3 years, I don't know, maybe 4 years. No, it had to been longer. So maybe like 5 years ago, probably 5 years ago, we were in a place where we were disconnected. And it was because we had two kiddos at the time. Now we have three. So I feel like with each addition of a child, you have to be more intentional, right? Because you have more needs. But we had to make the decision, like we were disconnected, we were arguing more frequently because of job hours or whatever. We were seeing each other like passerbyers, and so we had to decide like, okay, we know date night is really the way to connect and to provide a lot of the things that we are missing right now. Alone time, one-on-one time, connection, adult, like getting to know each other as we're changing and evolving, because we constantly are. We made the decision to date night every Friday night for 3 months. And so, and it was hard, right? Like I didn't want to do it a lot of those times. It's like every Friday night. And then we had to just line up a babysitter and make that sacrifice and make that intentionality of like, no, we need this and we need to invest in this for our marriage. And I look back and I'm like, had we not done that, we would have just became roommates, and ultimately roommates end up just separating and living on their separate lives, because that's what they are, right? Like, and so that makes me really sad to think that like, that would have been a possibility. But then I'm really grateful that we chose that for us and that we did that. And it was awkward as heck at first because I felt like we were failing, that we were like going to dinner and I couldn't think of anything to talk about but the kids, and the whole point of this was to get away from the kids, right? And so I was thinking like, okay, all we're doing is talking about the kids. And then we just kept pressing on, and it was awkward and it was hard. And I was going on Pinterest looking for discussion questions, like table questions. And I was like, had my phone under the table and I was like, so, but
I love that you shared that though, because it's so true.
Yeah. I mean, and then we just kept pressing forward. And then after that, I didn't have to Google questions, we became friends again, and we became, involved in each other's lives in other ways and just the kids, and to where I didn't need those questions, and date nights were fun and we look forward to them. And now I'm in a position where we don't have a date night that frequently anymore. I'm like, we're there again. Like we need to prioritize that. We're in an RV. I need to get out of here. So we're talking about how to do that now and making that sacrifice and investing, and because you just go through seasons, and we backed off for a couple years where we would only do it every other week. And so I think you just need to do what you need to do for the season that your marriage is in.
Yeah, and even if it's just like we talked about earlier, even if it's just after the kids are in bed and you're on the patio for an hour, FaceTime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reading questions off Pinterest, like even if it's that, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, for members of your audience who don't know my story, like my marriage tanked. Like I had a divorce attorney lined up. We separated. We were doing an in-home separation, and so it definitely did fall apart in a big way. And that was a huge part of it. Like, and when we'd go on dates, just to encourage you guys, we would do on like full-on screaming matches in the car before we got home. Like I'd be like wiping off tears before we'd walk in for my parents' babysitting. Like it was not good.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can come back from that,
right?
Y'all can.
Yeah, there's hope, guys.
There's hope. There is hope. There's possibility there. But to your point, and like that goes back to the idea of like we think like, oh my gosh, the fire's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't go out on dates. We don't feel right anymore. There's no hope. Like, and I think so many women need to hear stories like yours and mine, actually, because they need to hear, oh, they went through this phase and they were able to get through it, and then also be better because of it.
And then be aware. It makes you more aware of the next time. Like now I'm like, oh, this is why this is happening. We haven't prioritized date nights. So like we need to start putting that back up on the list, because life happens and that's okay. And it's never to shame or guilt yourself. It's just to always, I think, like acknowledge, be aware, having awareness, and then doing something about it. It's the choosing not to do something or hoping that it somehow works itself out is where we are
getting in trouble.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
or the grass is greener. That's always a great mindset. Because that's not true.
Yeah, I always follow that up as with you go wherever, like you are wherever you go. So like, girl, if you think your problems aren't going to follow you, yes, they are. They're going to just go right with you in those, like, but that's a whole nother topic too. But so yeah, do you have any last tips as far as prioritizing intimacy for women, for them to walk away with?
I would encourage women to make it their own priority to get very clear about what they want and need in order to want to be intimate with their husband. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of this starts with you can't communicate anything if you can't communicate what you don't know, right? And so a lot of women just simply don't know. Yeah. Or they're hoping, like they go on to, and similar to the mindset you kind of had with the date night, like you're just hoping for it to transpire. Right. And that's not necessarily bad. I hear what you're saying in that, because there's like that expectation and pressure is released. Right. But I think so many women do that to a default of like, or to a fault, because they're hoping their husband will just say the right thing or do the right thing and make them feel right. Mm-hmm. And that's a real big trap, because you shouldn't give them that much responsibility over your emotions and over your feelings, right? If there is something very specific that you're needing to have happen or looking forward to having happen because of your, you want to connect, be very intentional about what that looks like for yourself. Sit down, ask yourself this. Like, what do I need? Ladies, I'm all about a sexy outfit because I feel hot in it. Right. Like if I need to, like he likes it, I like it. Like if I need to go get a sexy outfit to get myself in the mood, if I need to just put some makeup on, like what is it gonna be for you that's gonna make you just like feel connected and feel sexy and get yourself in the mood? Take some of that responsibility onto yourself. Right.
Yeah, I think my tip would piggyback along with yours of just being intentional about communication, because like you said, you have to communicate about the pregame, right? Like what you need in order to get to where you want to go. But then also I think a lot of what hinders intimacy going down in the bedroom is a lack of communication about what happens in the bedroom. And so I think we need to be brave, even as Christian women. Like, it's okay to have needs. It's okay to be like, I don't like that. Like, or it's okay to be like, I want to try this. Like, we aren't monks. We aren't like, we aren't weirdos. We aren't aliens. It's okay to say
they
like,
wanna know.
Yeah. And they want to know. And so I think that it's okay to have those conversations. And if you do it in the right way of like, hey, I love you. I really enjoy our time together. But like, when you do this thing, like, you may be into it, or do you think that I'm into that because like that's not what's or whatever, and having those conversations, and then they're like, oh, like I totally thought because you were faking it, right? Like they totally thought you were enjoying it, and like you hate it, right? That's why you're like avoiding the bedroom, like he's gonna do that thing again, and you're like, so I mean, right? Like so, I think
how you say it.
Yes,
how you say it.
Yeah, and so so I think that would be my last tip, is always saying like, hey, I love you, and I enjoy our time doing this, that, and the other. But when you do this, and then you could say this or whatever, when we do this, which we is better than saying you, or I is better than saying you. And then always follow it up with like, hey, how can we figure this out together? I really enjoy our intimate time together. I really want to have fun with you. And then that takes the blame away. That takes the pressure off. And yeah. That's my last tip.
Well, I love that, and I'm sorry to I wanted to just do one more thing because of what you said was when you are, if we're just talking about like sex in and of itself and letting them know stuff you don't like, I always find it so much more beneficial to share what you do. Like it's not. I don't think there's anything wrong with letting him know like what you may not like or what you would. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I'm saying. There's a very delicate way to do that, and definitely never in the moment. Like it's always usually like way better to do like after the fact, like, hey, but letting him know what you really do like, being like, oh my gosh, when you do this, I love this. You will see that just happen more because they want to know what lights your fire, right? So that's also a really good thing, just a good tip that I learned too, because I was definitely like the corrector
Yeah.
in the sack for a while. So learn from my mistakes. Don't do what I did.
Okay, so in closing, I would say communication is key.
Yes.
You have to communicate about the pregame and during the game and because that, I think those are the two main things I think that are hindrances for women, and we may be missing on, I think, but for the majority, we do not know how to give the look half the time. I don't know what you're talking. Just give us the look. There is so much miscommunication in that. Like, we're like, are you constipated? Like, what are you trying to, like, that, those days are long gone in your 30s. I feel like sometimes, like, I remember this happened recently with my husband where I was like looking at him for some reason, and he was like, oh, like, you're giving me the look right now. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, it's not like I wasn't even looking at you. So anyways, yeah, so that would be the things that I would walk away with the most is communication. And it's that thing that we love to hate, right? Like, it's like, it's so not tangible communication. So we just kind of brush it off. But hey, honey, it's Tuesday. Yeah, you have to schedule it. Yeah. So anyway, so that is all. Scheduling, I think. Sexy. What were you saying?
I said scheduling sexy.
Yeah.
Sexy.
Yeah. See, and you schedule it like on a calendar, legit, or like
our date nights, right?
Okay.
Like, it's not like we're having sex tonight, but pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like,
see,
our date nights, we're pretty much just like, it's a mutual agreement that will be sex as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so yeah. But that's why I had to switch it around to some degree, because it's true. Like, you are your mom. Like, you get tired.
Yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, it's been a week.
Yeah.
Like, it's been 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yes, we do. But I had to really rework that in my head too. Is like, look, this is because we love each other, and this
Mm-hmm.
is sexy, and it can be fun. Like you said, send each other flirty stuff on, throughout the day, and prepare
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Exactly.
we could go on forever.
Yeah, I know. We need to get off now. Okay. So, yeah, thanks, Katie, for joining me. And we hope to do this again soon for you guys to listen in to all these marriage conversations. They are so much fun, and we will catch everybody next time. Bye, Katie.
Bye.